All right, welcome. If you don't know me, my name's Alex Enan. I run a website called nextSTL. Also the proud father of 3 little kids, 4, 6, and 5 weeks old. So this is my calm, happy place to be. So I'm happy to be here. But I love getting people together. Part of what tonight's about is literally just you guys meeting each other. But ostensibly we're here to hear from Ben Ross. And I'm excited because Ben brings kind of a long view of urban development to the discussion. And I'm 37. I'm often told I'm too young to, I need to wait my turn and I can talk up when I'm later or when I get elected to office or something like that. And in St. Louis, as you guys know, a lot of these discussions about urbanism kind of defaults to these millennials want this, and they're so demanding and they want their streets plowed and all this kind of stuff. And these are actual, if you haven't read it, these are literal, those are taken from the Post-Dispatch. So this is the attitude we bring, and so it's a great reminder for me, and I think for the community, to realize a lot of these quote fights or battles or things we're trying to do today, people have been working on these issues for a very, very long time. And we have a lot to learn from kind of those past experiences. So I want to say thank you to UIC especially. If you guys don't know what they do this. This is their office. They did Olio, Montessori City Garden Montessori School across the street. All the new modern houses you see in the blocks around us. And I'm told they still have some for sale. So if you're looking to buy, we're not raffling one off. I tried. But they're very, very cool. So come back, during the day if you're not familiar with the neighborhood. I will be at one of their projects, Olio, here after tonight. So thank you to them for being great hosts. Thank you, Urban Chestnut, for bringing us beer. Thank you, Left Bank Books. If you need to purchase a book, we're over here at the table, and they're the ones who kind of got the ball rolling on this event. And I did have a note. I do want to get this right. We borrowed a PA system. We borrowed chairs. There are a couple of people who helped make it happen. So the chairs came from City Garden Montessori. The PA system came from Mary Beth of Union Studios, who's the shop in the building right behind you. So I think it's very cool that we have a community here where literally we can pull together an event like this, and we have a great place, and we have the equipment, and we have what we need to do it. So thank you to all of them. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Ben.
Thank you very much, Alex. It's great to be here and see what's happening in this neighborhood and some of the ones around it. I thought I would start off by talking about how I came to write my book. It's an interesting story and somewhat emblematic and leads into the subject matter of the book. I live in the Washington suburbs in Maryland, and in 1986, the CSX Railroad abandoned the freight line that went between 2 very dense, walkable suburban downtowns. And the then governor of Maryland, former mayor of Baltimore, who was eager to build a light rail line in Baltimore, said, "We'll build yours too with state money, 4 miles between these 2 downtowns." However, our county has land use approval processes that take a long time. And by the time we had put this light rail line on our master plan, the light rail line in Baltimore had started construction, had overrun its budget, and had used up all the money. So at that point, they started studies to qualify our project for federal funding. However, we had a problem, which is that the rail right-of-way runs through the middle of the golf course of one of the most expensive country clubs in the Washington area. So they spent lavishly on public relations and did a lot of political fundraising. And in 1994, we elected a new county executive who was against the project, and a county council which was for it only 5-4, with one of the 5 saying, well, it'll be needed in 10 or 20 years, but not now. So nearly everyone gave the project up for dead. But we had a small citizens group, which at that point had about 50 or 60 members and about 10 or a dozen active people that wanted to keep plugging away. The founder of our group, named Harry Sanders, said, you know, we can't rely on the political leaders to push this anymore. We need to build a coalition. And so he set up a coalition. We got, at this point, just lip service from the business community. I mean, they were all for it, but they didn't think it had any possibility of really happening. A little bit more than that from labor. We got, the environmentalists were really not on board at this point because the opponents were complaining about the trees that would be cut down and so on. And the only real allies we had were neighborhoods along the Beltway, which this line would run parallel to, and they didn't want the Beltway widened. So the coalition started, and Harry asked me to become the president of the citizens group. He said, the coalition will do the work now. You won't have to do much work, right? So we started off, and one of the things we tried to do was bring the role of the country club out into the open, because they were, of course, trying to remain behind the scenes. And we put out press releases. We sometimes held signs on appropriate occasions in front of their entrance. At one point, I ran into the lobbyist for the country club at a political fundraiser. And he says, you know, my mother really doesn't like what you guys are saying about me. I said, your mother should love what we say about you. All we talk about is how highly paid you are. Before the 1998 election, we passed out scorecards rating all the candidates at our metro stations. And we discovered that once you have a rail line, you have a great political advantage because you can stand in front of the station and pass out flyers, and you are micro-targeting your supporters. We have 2 branches of the Washington Metro in our county, and we distributed 20,000 scorecards. We elected a new county council that was in favor of the project 6-3, with one of the 6 crediting our scorecard for his margin of victory. So the day after they were sworn into office, they sent a letter to the state asking them to restart the environmental studies. Meanwhile, the project grew, actually as an outgrowth of the studies of widening the Beltway. Perhaps the only time in history that an environmental impact statement for building a highway is actually leading to the building of a non-highway alternative, a transit line. In 2001, the then Governor Paris Glendening, who had become a great supporter of smart growth, made an announcement that he would build it. Through a lot of work on this coalition, we had the environmentalists firmly on our side at this point. The business people and labor got very active because it was clearly a real project. And at this point, we had a coalition consisting of business, labor, environmentalists, minorities. This larger project goes through the middle of the largest Hispanic neighborhood in Maryland. It also goes right through the campus of the University of Maryland. It will actually have a stop at the foot of the steps of the Student Union. And it connects to the 2 more branches of the Washington Metro system, and it connects to a station on the rail line from New York to Washington, all in a straight line. It's sort of a transportation planner's dream. The predicted ridership is 74,000 a day on a single line. So in 2001, when Governor Glendening made this announcement, we had this coalition, business, labor, environmentalists, minority groups, and we actually had more civic groups on our side than against us. And all my previous experience of politics and anything you can read in political science books will tell you if all these people are for something, it's going to happen. But that was not our experience, and that is frequently not the experience with transit and with urbanism. Urbanist redevelopment is extremely hard to get done, and even when you get it done, there are so often compromises that make it not what it really should be. You know, the road's too wide, too much parking, not facing the street enough, and so on. So the purpose of my book is really to investigate why is this stuff so hard. But I don't want to leave you hanging about the purple line, so I will come back to that. In 2002, we elected a governor who was against the project, Governor Ehrlich. The business people convinced him not to just kill it, and instead they spun their wheels for 4 years studying alternatives that didn't make any sense. Governor Ehrlich allowed himself to be quoted in the newspaper saying it will not go through the country club. So this became a major issue in the election for governor in 2006. Martin O'Malley, the Democratic candidate, actually it took quite a bit of courage for him because this country club is very tightly tied into his fundraising base. But he made it a major issue, and he had the pleasure of campaigning for the 99% against the 1% with the Chamber of Commerce and Board of Trade on his side. And he was elected, and the studies got going, but it takes time to regain momentum, and they needed to dot every I and cross every T because they knew they were going to get sued. However, progress has continued. Last year, and now I'm going to make you folks envious, last year the Maryland legislature raised the gasoline tax 20 cents a gallon, with the main purpose being to build this light rail line and another light rail line through Baltimore. They had to promise a bunch of highway projects to get it through the legislature, and they overpromised a little. So rather than the original plan of these two light rail lines being built 100% state and federal funding, the localities are being asked to contribute 10% in cash or right-of-way. After the legislature did this, the country club saw the handwriting on the wall, and they reached an agreement with the state. The right-of-way will be diverted 12 feet to the side, which will allow them to keep the 15th tee where they want it. And in exchange, they've agreed not to oppose it. This year, the president's budget recommends the project for $100 million of construction funding next year and $900 million total funding agreement. And they now have an RFP out for the company that will build and operate it. And if nothing more goes wrong, construction will start next year. But it has been a long, hard road since 1986. And people around the country, and I'm sure in St. Louis, can tell similar stories. So I asked myself, as this was going on, why is this stuff so hard? And there are, of course, quite a few answers that are out there that people use. And all of them have some truth to them, but I don't find any of them completely satisfying as an explanation of why it's systematically so difficult. One thing people say is that human beings are just intrinsically resistant to change. But let's say if that was true in all spheres of activity, Apple Computer would not do as well as it does. Another thing you hear is that people are protecting their property values by resisting change. But if you go down to the next metro station from where I live, there's the site of the hardest fought master plan battle in the history of our county. And what sits there now is a row of stores next to each other, Tiffany, Jimmy Choo, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, and Bulgari. I'm not making this up. And nobody thought that was going to lower their property values. Another thing you hear is that it's environmentalism, but you'll see people frequently, well, sometimes, mobilizing to preserve parking lots. You see, and you hear about that it's well, excuse me. You'll hear people talk about I said environmentalism. You hear all these excuses, but they don't really explain. So I think there has to be some common element in why this is so hard. And what I think it is that we have over a century built up a value system in which living in a single family house and traveling by automobile are seen as socially superior. And that value system and sense of entitlement is challenged by people who think that living in a city is better. And so you have this real clash between two value systems. Usually that's kind of subtext, but sometimes it comes out into the open. Our county just rewrote its zoning code, and one of the hot issues was whether to allow people to raise chickens in their backyards. Someone came to the public hearing and testified that allowing chickens in backyards would be, quote, a cultural slap in the face at the African American community, unquote. She said, we grew up poor in the South. We had chickens in the backyard because we needed them to feed our families. We made it, we moved to the suburbs. Don't remind us of that. Another place you can see this kind of clash of value systems is in the way people complain, the way drivers complain about bicycles on the roads. Anyone who's done statistical studies of bicycle commuting finds that a very large percentage of bicycle commuters are people who ride their bikes either because they can't afford a car or because they're undocumented and can't get a license. But you never hear complaints about those bicyclists. The complaints are always about the bicyclists in spandex. So, because the person, the middle class person in spandex is challenging your superiority as a driver, which the other one isn't. Well, from all of this, what can we learn? I think there's several lessons. One is recognize that people have these concerns about social status, and that's very important. I mean, if people are in real estate marketing, this is like, telling Monsieur Jourdain that he knows how to speak prose. Because if you look at real estate look at the pictures in real estate ads, and you'll see what they're selling. But in dealing with the political issues, you have to recognize the same thing. The purple line, our light rail line, the end where I live in Bethesda has become the center of fancy restaurants in Washington, has really replaced Georgetown in that. Georgetown is now a place, the houses are, it's still, multi-million-dollar row houses, but the retail streets are now more places where college students go to drink on the weekend. So in the parts of the route further east, we told people that you'll be able to take the train to Bethesda to have dinner. Now that, people will do that, but it will not be the major driving force of the 74,000 riders a day. But people understood that, and it showed them that it was, first of all, something that could be useful. They saw how it would be useful. And more important, they saw this as something that would elevate the status of their neighborhood. Now, in Bethesda, the residential parts of the restaurants are in downtown Bethesda. The residential areas are on the other side from the light rail line, so you won't be able to ride it to downtown Bethesda. But what we said there was, Georgetown turned down the metro. Look what happened there. You don't want downtown Bethesda to go the way of Georgetown. Now, Bethesda is a very nice section, so not too many places you would tell people you don't want to be like Georgetown. But it really resonated in Bethesda. A second very important point is that you need to broaden the decision making, and you really need to make decisions in a more democratic way. Because we've built up over a century, and this is something I talk a lot about in the book, how it happened, this system, a zoning and land use control system, which is really, its highest purpose is to preserve the single-family neighborhood as a single-family neighborhood. We've set up a system of governance in which decisions are made by small groups, the neighborhood negotiating with the developer, and maybe the local government serving as a referee. And that's fine for the details, because obviously the neighbors need input into the details, but it is a profoundly undemocratic way to make our big picture decisions about what kind of transportation system should we have, where should the region's new housing go. And I know this area, from what I've heard, is particularly afflicted by this system of very small jurisdictions having zoning control. I think one of the reasons that the Washington suburbs have been successful in creating urban nodes is that the zoning is pretty much done on the county level. And you have to find ways to elevate the decision making. For the Purple Line, when it was just a 4-mile segment, it tended to be seen as just a local squabble. But once it became a 16-mile light rail line that went through 2 counties, people could really see how this would be transformative. And one of the things we did, and frankly we did not do enough, was raise the level of debate out of don't get bogged down in the local disputes. I mean, you have to answer your critics, but don't let them monopolize your time. You have to bring more people into the decision making and have the decision be truly democratic. I want to close with a third lesson. And the third lesson is that citizen involvement in this kind of issue, in all these issues, can be tremendously effective. And it doesn't have to be an enormous number of people, especially at the beginning, because there are a lot of people who there's kind of a silent middle group out there that you can speak for. And people are looking for better communities, they're looking for better transportation. People, especially in the Midwest, are looking for the contribution that rail transportation can make to reviving our manufacturing. So as citizens, when you speak out, you can make an enormous difference. And that's what our story shows, and you'll see it again and again around the country. Thank you very much. I will be very happy. There are more books for sale, and I'll be very happy to sign books after the talk, after we have some discussion. Thanks.